Hey, I'm Daniel and I'm 34. I've always been the one in my family who keeps things together, not the favorite for sure and not the shining star. I was just the one who always stepped up, fixed problems, and quietly covered bills nobody wanted to deal with. My younger brother, Matt, is the polar opposite. He's got this amazing charm, super spontaneous. Kind of reckless, but in a way that people seem to love. He could mess up big time and still get a pass, while I'd get told to be more understanding. I mostly just went with it. I hung back, helped out when they needed me, and just swallowed the injustice like it was some gross medicine. But I never saw what was coming that night of his engagement dinner. It was a warm Friday night. I got to the restaurant a little early, holding the gift. Nothing too fancy, just something I put thought into. A personalized decanter set with their names and the date they got engaged. I also planned a little something special for the end of the night. Champagne on me. I knew no one would say thank you, but maybe Mom, the one who always tries to keep the family connected, would give me a little nod. I wore my best suit, grinned through all the awkward family small talk, and even offered to say a toast, quick and heartfelt, to Matt and Lee. I said, "May your life together be as bright and energetic as your group chats." Everyone chuckled. Even Lee cracked a small smile at me. But then, sometime between the second course and dessert, things changed. Lee, Matt's fiancée, had always been kind of cold. Not outright mean, just distant. She had this way of being polite that just made you feel less. She was loaded, and she made sure you knew it. Like she'd actually say, "Oh, I thought they stopped making those cars," if you mentioned what you drove. But that night, after a few cocktails, when everyone was watching her, she just cracked. She turned to me, that little smile barely there, and said, "Matt told me your mom practically begged him to have you here. Said she didn't want the pictures to look, off, family." She giggled like it was a funny story. My fork just froze. I blinked. "Excuse me?" I asked. "Oh, don't take it the wrong way," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "She just didn't want to deal with any issues, you know how she is." I looked at Matt, waiting, a look, a denial, something, but he just stared at his plate, playing with his food. Then he let out this little chuckle. Not loud, but enough. Enough to make my stomach just drop right there. My dad smirked and mumbled, "Well, you can be a bit much, you know." I wasn't sure which hurt more, Lee's comment, my dad's brush off, Matt's silence. It all just crashed over me in this weird, quiet wave. I wasn't even mad yet, just cold empty. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't yell. I just folded my napkin, stood up slow, and said, "I think I'm good for tonight." Someone called my name. I didn't even register who. I just walked out into the night like it was any other night, but my heart was just pounding. I just sat there in the car for ages, hands gripping the steering wheel, just spaced out. My phone buzzed once. It was a text from my mom. "You couldn't have stayed a bit longer for your brother? Seriously? Don't screw this up." Screw what up? A night where I was basically invisible, just a side note in their perfect little world. I really shouldn't have been surprised. I'd been putting up with this crap for years. I went to everything, did everything I was asked, paid for stuff no one even remembered. I co-signed Matt's first condo loan when he was, 24 and had zero credit. I helped Dad get out of a tax mess he acts like never happened. I even paid for Mom's dental work last spring when her insurance went haywire. None of it ever mattered. None of it was ever enough. But that night, that stupid comment, that was it. Because what they didn't know, what nobody at that dinner knew, was that I had already planned a six-figure transfer for Matt. It wasn't a gift, not really. It was a deal. I quietly bought a little investment property a year ago. The plan was to sell it this quarter and give him the money for the down payment on his dream house. He had no clue. No one did. I was gonna tell him at dinner. I canceled it the next morning, pulled the plug, and moved the money around. And while I was at it, I went through every account, every payment, every little thing I'd been doing out of, what, duty? The gym membership my dad had accidentally linked to my card. Those monthly payments to Mom, labeled miscellaneous errands. Poof, gone. Even the family Spotify account, the four of them all on it. Kaput. I didn't text, didn't answer a single call. I just started fading out of their lives bit by bit. They still don't know everything I took with me when I left that restaurant. Not yet, anyway. See, I had access to other stuff, too. Stuff they really depended on. And the second I walked out of that dinner, I decided I was done being their silent, invisible pillar, the one they leaned on while secretly trash-talking me. Let me tell you, things are about to explode, big time. The silence after dinner was super weird. No texts, no calls, nothing. Not even those passive-aggressive group chats with all the birthday reminders and endless photos, stuff that never included me anyway. At first, I thought maybe they'd noticed that my disappearing act had made them think twice. But then I remembered who I was dealing with. 3 days later, boom, a text from Matt. "Hey bro," it said. "Just checking in about that thing you mentioned a few months back. The house fund. We're looking at places this weekend. Let me know what I can do." I just sat there staring at my phone, his casual, entitled tone making me sick. No, thanks for everything. No mention of the dinner. He just picked up where he left off, expecting me to keep being their quiet, dependable ATM. I just didn't answer. Then, a day later, an email popped up from my dad. Subject: crazy high electric bill. Something like, "Daniel, the electricity bill's way higher than normal this month. Check it out. Maybe the auto pay messed up." I almost snorted. No mess up. I'd canceled every single auto pay I had set up. I didn't even bother replying. I figured it would take them a week or two to really grasp how much I was keeping afloat. Then the phone calls started. First Mom, twice in one morning. Then Dad. Then Matt again. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't ready, not even close. Because while they were just starting to feel the pinch, I had something else cooking. Here's the deal. I work in finance. Nothing glamorous, mostly real estate and helping mid-sized investors with their money. But I'm good with money, really good. I know how to move things around quietly. So about 6 years ago, Matt comes to me with this business idea, some wellness app he and his buddy were starting. His buddy had zero tech skills and was already 30 grand in credit card debt. Matt didn't have a business plan, not even a decent presentation. Just these huge eyes and even bigger dreams. I said no at first, but Mom called me that night, crying. She said, "He just wants to prove himself, Daniel, be a success. Can't you help him?" So I did. I gave him $80,000, told him it was a loan, all official, with a repayment schedule and everything. He signed, all smiles, without even reading it probably. The app, dead in 18 months. Everyone thought I was just letting it go. They didn't get that Matt had to give me some of the online stuff when he was paying me back. Even though the whole thing went south, that stuff still had worth. Things like the domain names, how the affiliates worked, the email list. I secretly sold it all last year to a buyer for almost $140,000. Nobody knew about it. And that money, it was safe. In a trust. A trust they couldn't mess with. They thought it was for family stuff, to help everyone out. Actually, my mom just asked me last month if that whole inheritance thing was still being taken care of. I smiled and said everything was good. What she didn't know was that I changed who the money went to recently. None of them were in it anymore. I also remembered something else. Something kind of messy. Matt and Lee had the budget for their engagement party run through an account connected to my business's client stuff. I said I'd help them with it so they could get all the rewards and keep track of what they were spending. I was just trying to be nice. But at the time, that account was being looked at because Lee, being so sure of herself, went a little wild with some fancy purchases, figuring I wouldn't really pay attention. Dresses, spa trips, a first-class flight she said was to look at locations for the party. She didn't stick to the budget rules and called a bunch of things business expenses. So after a couple of hushed talks with the audit guys at work, let's just say things got messy for them financially. Their shared credit got frozen, waiting for the whole thing to be looked into. Then the texts started blowing up my phone. "Daniel, this isn't a game, we have to chat. Did you stop paying for Mom's insurance? The automatic payments? She just got a bill. You're acting like a kid." This is what you always do, you make everything about yourself, but they still just didn't get it. This wasn't just about one meal or a snarky remark from Lee or even Dad's little jokes. It was about years and years. Years of always being there, giving until I was empty, giving up weekends, trips, even my sanity, just so they could make fun of me at the dinner table that I'd helped pay for. And it wasn't just money. It was all the emotional stuff, too. Sitting through family gatherings where I was the therapist, fixing Matt's screw-ups, offering to help when Mom needed someone to deal with Dad's taxes. I was the one secretly sending my sister money on Venmo when she was too proud to ask Dad for rent. They thought if I kept quiet, I was fine with everything. That being quiet meant I was weak, and that being there for them all the time meant I was just replaceable. So I stopped. And that's when everything really hit the fan. The group chat exploded. Finally, Mom's frantic texts, Dad's not-so-subtle voice notes, Matt's long, angry essays about how I was betraying everyone. Lee even threw in a comment about how sad it was that bitterness ruins your ability to be happy for others. I almost wrote back. Almost, but instead I sent one single message. That was it. You can't trash what everything's built on and then act surprised when things fall apart. So I muted the whole thing. That same day, I got a text from my aunt. We barely ever talked. It just said, "Whatever you're going through, I see you and I'm proud of you." I almost lost it right then and there, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because I still had something with me from that dinner. They hadn't figured it out yet, and once they realized what it was, everything was going to change. At first, they didn't notice a thing. Of course they didn't. That would have meant actually paying attention, and that wasn't exactly a family trait. But slowly, things began to unravel, little by little. It wouldn't be long before they realized the most precious thing I took wasn't cash. It wasn't the trust fund. It wasn't the property deeds or the ability to get a line of credit. It was the family business, or the part of it they didn't know I owned. When my grandpa died, he left behind some self-storage places. Nothing fancy, but they made a solid profit, with tenants always renting and hardly any expenses. My dad was managing them, and everyone thought he was calling the shots. But he wasn't a businessman. He was just a front, and when he messed up a few years ago, he came crawling to me, quietly and desperate. He'd almost lost one of the properties. He hadn't paid the property taxes for 2 years straight. The county was on the verge of taking it over. He was practically on his knees, begging for help, saying it was a total screw-up, a one-time thing, he'd make it right. I said okay, I'd bail him out, but there was a catch. He had to give me a major share of that one branch. He didn't even hesitate. He was so freaked out, he probably would have signed over his house. So, without thinking it through, he gave me the reins of the only part of his business that actually made any real money. I jumped in, fixed things up, got new software, cut the fat, renegotiated the leases, the whole shebang. I took that one branch and turned it around completely. Then I bought another one. This time, I did it all above board, using a dummy company. He had no clue it was me, and I wanted to keep it that way. Now, 3 out of the 5 branches are mine legit, with all the paperwork in order. They'd never bother to look closely. They always thought they were too smart, too important, too central to the whole thing. They never suspected a thing. I kept sending my dad's old business email those quarterly reports, all faked up to look normal. He never actually looked at the books anyway. He just glanced at the bottom line and figured it was all his. But this time, I didn't send the fake reports. This time, I let him see the truth. It started with a call to the property manager. I hired someone really professional, trustworthy, and discreet, 'cause I pay well and treat people right. I told her to change the signs on the buildings. I just made a little change, swapped out the old family crest logo for the new branding I'd been secretly working on. She sent me a text with a photo once it was up. Black and white lettering, sleek, modern, and clean. Daniel and Company Storage Solutions. Secure your future with people who show up. The next call was from Matt, but not to me. He called the property manager. He wanted to know why the sign was different. Where the heck was the old logo? My dad owns this place. Who gave the okay? She told him, cool and professional, that any questions had to go through the legal owner. And then she gave him my name. I bet his face was something to see. That's when all hell broke loose. My phone was ringing off the hook for the next 6 hours. First, Dad, yelling at me, wanting to know what I'd done. He called it fraud, even though he'd signed every single paper himself and threatened to get lawyers he couldn't afford. I just let it go to voicemail. Then Mom, crying, saying I was ripping the family apart, saying I was being mean, vindictive, and ungrateful. I stared at her message for a long time, that word ungrateful just echoing in my head, like all the years of doing everything for everyone hadn't even earned me the right to leave. Matt called next, 8 missed calls in a row, then he finally left a message. I can't believe you do this, he said. I don't even care about the money, man. This was about family, about legacy. You just stole it because you're bitter. That's all you've ever been. Jealous and bitter. Jealous? I almost laughed out loud. It wasn't that he was wrong. Oh no, he was dead wrong. It wasn't jealousy, I was just plain worn out. Dead tired of showing up and being treated like I wasn't really part of the family. Sick of those fake smiles that turned into sneers the second my back was turned. So done with them tolerating me only because I was useful. So I took back what was rightfully mine, not to get revenge, but because I deserved better than being a footnote in my own family history. The next day I got an email from Daniel, short, cold, and just like I knew it would be. Whatever your problems are, it said, they shouldn't affect Matt's future. Be the bigger person. You've made your point. Now fix this before the wedding turns into a total mess. I just sat there looking at it, my heart surprisingly calm, my hands steady. Fix it? No way. This wasn't about fixing anything. This was the moment everything they'd messed up finally started to crumble around them. And I wasn't even done yet, because there was one more thing they were about to lose. And this one was going to hurt the most. I waited a week, not because I was hesitant, but because I wanted them to really feel the silence. I wanted them to stew in their own self-importance. I wanted things to settle down so that when I finally hit them with the last blow, they wouldn't have a place to hide. And when it came, it wouldn't be a dramatic scene. It wouldn't be mean. It would be quiet, precise, and final. The family trust. My grandpa was always prepared. A military man who became a small-town businessman, he planned for everything. My grandfather was a big believer in having things in their place, in order, and that leaving something behind mattered. He had a trust, nothing fancy, but well kept. It wasn't a fortune, some land, some investments, and a small chunk of the storage business our family had always run. But it was enough, enough to give us a good life for years. College, weddings, buying houses, it all came from that. Enough to keep Matt driving a brand new car every year, and Mom could just relax like she was some retired big shot. What most of them didn't know was that I was the one who took care of all his stuff near the end. Not because I wanted to, but because it was my job. I'd see him at the nursing home twice a week, reading to him, helping him sort his pills, filling out paperwork, and keeping his lawyer up to date with all the health and money stuff. I was always there. And that's why, about 6 months before he died, he looked at me and said something that stuck with me ever since. They'll be swarming as soon as I'm gone. Just make sure the one who actually showed up doesn't get screwed. I didn't get it back then, but now it's as clear as day. When he changed the trust, he made me the one in charge. No fanfare, nothing. Nobody noticed, and I didn't say anything. They all thought my dad was running things, and that worked for me. I never touched it, never got involved. Not even when Matt wanted some money early for some stupid crypto thing that went nowhere. It didn't even faze me when Mom floated the idea of borrowing the college money to cover some of her cosmetic bills from that place in Arizona. I acted clueless, letting them think Dad was in charge. But when I killed all the access that week, when I officially shut down the old trust and moved everything to a new portfolio, they figured it out pretty quickly. The first call came from Dad's lawyer, the guy he'd used forever. I knew him, Rick. He's a soft-spoken guy who hates conflict. Daniel, he said, his voice tense. Dad thinks I locked him out of the trust, I told him, cool as can be. That's because you did, he said. You're the legal trustee now. I let the silence hang for a second. Then I said, I always have been. He hesitated. You realize this is going to stir things up? I said, that's the plan. He sighed. I figured the explosion came the next day. Dad showed up at my office without warning. He shoved past the receptionist, his face all red, already yelling. You think you can just steal from your own family? From your brother? From your mother? I didn't move. I didn't even blink. No, I said. I think I finally stopped giving to people who never said thanks. You're bitter. No, I said again. I'm just tired. There's a difference. And I'd rather be the bad guy in your story than the pushover in mine. He slammed his hands on my desk. You're going to ruin everything. This family, they can't just rewrite my life. I'm not changing a thing, I told him, getting to my feet. My voice was quiet, but I meant every word. I'm just walking away from this whole I'm here to serve you thing. He just looked at me, and that's when I saw it, pure fear. Not about the money, no. He was scared because he finally realized he never really knew me at all. After he left, I sat back down and stared at all those papers. The new trust, it was bulletproof. The undeveloped land already had a buyer lined up. I even double-checked everything myself, making sure the money from the parts of the business I ran was safely tucked away. I put it in a fund for someone they'd never guess. My niece, Matt's little girl, 6 years old. Sweetest kid. One Thanksgiving, she sat next to me and asked if I liked being the family's helper. I just laughed, I didn't know what to say. But that night, she slipped a drawing into my coat pocket me in a superhero cape, standing next to a treasure chest that said Mr. Daniel's Secret Gold. I didn't cry right then, but I sure did later when I found it again. I'd seen enough to know that little girl wouldn't have a chance with them. Their love was all about what you could give them, not who you were, so I made her the beneficiary. She gets everything when she's 25. But there's one rule: none of her family gets a dime unless she decides to share it. The rest? It's going to charity scholarships for first-generation college students. It's for kids who always felt like outsiders, you know. Funds for the shy ones, the ones nobody notices, the ones everyone underestimates, the ones who keep showing up even when nobody's cheering. Then the next week, I got the last call from my mom. Her voice was shaky, almost a whisper. "Danny," she said, "what are you doing?" I didn't say anything. "You're hurting the people who love you." I took a breath. "No, Mom, I'm hurting the people who used me. There's a difference." She sniffled. "You used to be so kind." "I still am," I told her, "just not to people who mistake kindness for weakness." And then I hung up. That was it. I never heard from any of them again. I know what they're saying, too, that I lost it, that I'm selfish, cold, that I turned my back on family. Let them. Because I know what really happened. I know the long nights, the quiet struggles, the times I paid their bills and they barely even acknowledged me. How they laughed at me, then came crawling back when they needed something. All the years I was their rock while they acted like I wasn't even there. Nah, they can figure it out themselves. The storage units are doing great. Under new management, everything's solid. The money's untouched. My niece is taken care of. And for the first time in a long time, my phone is silent. Peacefully, wonderfully silent. People sometimes ask if I miss them. No, I miss who I thought they were, who I wish they could be. But the guy who stayed around hoping they'd change, he's gone. The new me is, well, I'm here. Now he sleeps soundly, inhales without a struggle, and actually grins, not that fake, forced smile, but a real one. They'll never understand what I walked away with that night. It wasn't just the cash. I took me with me.